I was kind of glad they addressed that issue with the captain and Kelly, as far as they at least gave it a go.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, I think if they'd have just kept the tension on, it would have just gotten a bit too monotonous. But
Yeah.
I mean, there is still potential for that ship to set sail later on.
It's the Ross and Rachel. It bounces back and around, and maybe at the end of it it'll the last episode, whenever that is, 7 seasons from now, they'll they'll come up with something and they'll ride off into the supernova together or something. But as of right now, they're not in a place where that can happen. So, but
all the crew members are just like, will you just fuck already?
Well, one of the things that I guess it's an interesting way of doing this sort of episode, because they never said anything directly about a directive that was prime in nature, but I assume that it's kind of implied that they have one, and it's interesting to have an episode where somebody violates that, even small, and you see why they have the prime directive. And but the interesting thing is, if this had been a normal planet, no one would have ever known about what happened. By the time they went to the stars, they'd have gotten over the sort of Kelly religion, and they might have said, oh yeah, that's an odd looking uniform, that looks like a uniform from a couple thousand years ago. If it had been a normal planet. But by the time they got spacefaring, which would have been, I guess, well, it took them 3 runs, so it's like 2,100 years. So she would have been long dead before they ever figured out what happened. And they might even they probably wouldn't even be able to identify her on those ancient artifacts. Just that somebody came down at some point at this year and did that. So the only reason this even was a thing was because of the different time constant.
Yes.
Oh, okay, here's Alex.
Person!
Hey, that means I'm pretty much almost done with the semester.
But
well, hello, Trixie.
But yeah, we're on talking on the finale of the Orville, the season finale.
Oh, cool.
But
I like how they allowed you that they gave that explanation where most of the time it's just like, yeah, don't do that. Aside from Doctor Who, you never get the wow. Doctor Who, I'm pretty sure they've touched on that at least once, but that's because he can go and do that where he comes back centuries later and oh yeah.
I hate fairy tales. He always turns out to be the wizard.
Mm-hmm.
Was it like Merlin or something? He was Merlin?
He was Merlin in what was that episode called? Battlefield.
He always, I hate old fairy tales. He always turns out to be the wizard.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's okay. Well, I guess we just go through the episode. We hit some of the high points, and I guess at the end we can talk about what we think of the season and what should go on from here. So he's looking for someone. The whole spiel starts with Mercer looking for somebody to have a drink with. Finally managing to sort of engage with Bortus and Clyden on their some cultural things. It's like, this creates a parasite that I can't tell a thing you're saying, Doc.
I want to play that game.
Oh, I do not. Because to win, you must stab through your own hand.
It's like the ultimate hot potato.
Yes, with a spike.
Yes.
This is not a thing I would enjoy. I mean, if you catch it with one hand, there is a small chance, if there's a chance that you don't, it goes off, but you don't impale your hand. Because wasn't it only like one spike?
Yeah, it was one spike through the...
Yeah, so I mean, if it doesn't detect where a hand is and it just sort of shoots out where its spike is, then there's a chance you can win, I guess, if winning isn't getting stabbed with a hand. If you're just going off, with you in it, which if it's just you holding on to, it's a weird game if you think about it, because you're supposed to throw it back and forth, but you win by holding it.
Yeah, true.
So
It's kind of like a potato, but in reverse.
yeah. So theoretically, if you were trying to win the game, the idea would be to hold it as long as possible.
I guess it's cheating if you hold it too long, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say there's probably some rules saying you can't hold it for more than like a few seconds or something.
Yeah, you get you're hogging the latchcomb. You're hogging the latchcomb. And people don't play with you anymore if you do that. If you play along, you do what you're supposed to do, and it just goes off on its own. Then that's one thing. But you sit there and hold it, and I'm sure there are techniques to hold it just long enough to where people will still let you play with them, but not long enough that you
Do what you did and distract them with the conversation.
Yeah, maybe you should have asked for the rules first and what would happen.
Right?
Yeah.
I think he was just lonely and bored and was like, you know what? Yeah. I'll play anything, dude. I'm bored. At least it wasn't some kinky thing like, what's his name? The blue dude.
Oh, Darulio?
Yeah. Maybe.
Well, good thing he didn't put it in his lap.
Yeah. There's probably some high-tech medical procedures in that in the repertoire of the doc, but
able to regrow a leg. I'm pretty sure they could.
Yeah,
but it's still not pleasant.
Question: would he want to go to the doctors and be like, "Yeah, see what happened was I was playing a game."
The funny thing is, if he had waited and officially went down and got the treatment from the doc, an entire civilization wouldn't have had Kelly the god. Because the whole reason she had the dermal regenerator was because she smuggled it out to heal his hand off the record. So if Malloy or
it's all Mercer's fault.
what?
It's all Mercer's fault.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If you get down to it, if if Malloy or the other one, what was his name? Lamar. If Malloy or Lamar had gone drinking with him, he wouldn't have gotten into the accident with the latchcomb, and he wouldn't have needed her to get the Drummer dinner. So it's actually their fault. It's actually Malloy's fault, because if Malloy had gone drinking with him, the whole situation would have been there would be no Kelly.
Blame Lamar. I mean, he was you really don't even Mercer's like, no, dude, totally have
Yeah.
you can't blame Lamar on that one.
Yeah, just if we're gonna go back to what's the source that kicked off the entire chain of events, or if he just stayed home and drank, the whole thing would have gone. Nothing would have happened.
Exactly.
So ultimately, it was his own fault for wanting to go get a drink, or if he just went ahead and went down to the mess hall and drank alone, and waited to see who showed up.
I'm sure there's somebody there.
Yeah, it's a ship. I imagine they have shifts, and eventually people are going to be on their recreational side of their shift. It's probably a 3-part shift. It's 8 hours of work, and then about 8 hours of rec and do whatever you want, and then it's about your day is 8 hours work, 8 hours rec, 8 hours sleep, and then you start it over again. So there's lots of people with time off that will be down there probably any moment. That's why 10 Ford. Well, was 10 Ford always full? Or always had somebody in it? I would imagine so.
Not always. I do believe they closed 10 Forward as far as 10 Forward wasn't the only mess. That was more like their bar. The bar part did close down.
Okay.
They had people in there, but it wasn't like open, It wasn't like the replicators were available, but that was about it.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, my always thought with this sort of thing is, if it's on a starship, there's a bar open at all times. If you're gonna have bars, if you're going to have a bar like on a Galaxy class ship, to me, it would make sense to keep it open all the time, because yeah, you have your first shift people, but in space, a clock is kind of arbitrary. So, what's one person's 2 a.m. is another person's 8 a.m. So,
they didn't really have night and day cycles. The lights never really did.
Yeah, there's no.
But not in Star Trek.
Yeah, there should be. It seems to me that it would be a rotating shift, and it would just be a matter of finding somebody. If you wanted to talk to Guinan, you'd have to go on during her shift. Like, there would be other bartenders on the other 16 hours a day, but the whole place would be open. It seems to me like someplace like a mess hall or something would be open 24/7, because they're always, there's always a shift on. There's always a shift, probably a shift sleeping, a shift on, and a shift relaxing. So there's always somebody. I mean, the first shift people, yeah, the captain and those people, yeah, you're going to be open for them, but you're also going to be open for the mid shift and the night shift and all that. The mid shift and the second shift and the third shift, that because the ship has to be maintained all night, so it has to be manned 24/7. So there, that's got to be open at all times.
Yeah.
The worst job on a starship, janitor, because it is such a huge thing.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, And it seems to me...
Oh.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, yeah, you're dealing with aliens all the time, so there's no telling what you're going to have to clean up.
Exactly.
It's one of those things where it's actually an officer-level position because you have to know how to handle all these different messes. It's like, oh yes, that mess. That would be a cool episode. Just a talk with the janitor. You know,
it's like, dude, stop leaving your slime everywhere.
Yes, especially with this series, because they do have a slime character.
But
yeah,
it
y'all
seemed to me that he doesn't. But he is slime, but he seems like self-contained. He doesn't seem to leave a residue. I don't think. It's one of those. What?
It's not a smooth.
He doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't leave. He's not like Slimer from Ghostbusters. He doesn't leave slime where he goes. He just sort of because even just a little bit of it, if it falls off of him, he has a dim sense of where it is. It's a
dark.
Yeah, it's like you suddenly one of your toenails falling off. It doesn't happen. Your toenails just don't fall off. They something has to happen for them to fall off.
Things fall off.
What?
For some reason.
But
yeah. I do want to see Yaphet and the Doctor get together
again.
Yeah, no.
No, that was traumatizing. Not literally, but it was still weird.
And there's some freaky stuff out there on that. There's some freaky fan fiction out there on that sort of stuff. But at this point, we kind of get what.
You, Jack. I'm like, do you want to go swimming? He's like, yeah.
Well, anyway, at this point we get, with those two heading off for a drink, Mercer finally comes to saying, yeah, what we already kind of thought he was thinking, but he finally sort of makes it explicit that, yeah, you probably weren't in your right mind when you did that. That wasn't you. It wasn't you who caused me it wasn't you that caused you to cheat. It was the pheromones. And
yeah, it wasn't your fault you cheated. It was that dude seduced you. She was basically date raped.
Yeah, basically. But yeah, you basically made what was sort of implicit explicit.
Yeah.
And so at this point, they get drunk.
Oh yeah.
They get really drunk and have a massive hangover the next day. Like, just dim the lights. Yes, dim the lights. Yes, thank you.
It's like, can you turn down the sun, please?
Yeah, essentially they do that. Is like dim the view screen by 20%. I've never had a hangover, but I gotta imagine from what I hear, it's like that bridge is really freaking bright. Everything is lit up like a freaking Christmas tree. So I gotta imagine even going in there is like, and the ship is well lit anyway, but that bridge is just super bright.
Yeah, and I've never had an actual hangover, but I haven't had a dehydration hangover, which I mean is basically the same thing because the reason people get hangovers is due to dehydration and toxins in their body built up. So basically, I've had a hangover even though I've never done it.
Yeah.
And you do not want lights. You do not want anything except, maybe a massage because your entire body aches and your head throbs if you move.
Yeah.
All right, so they notice the unusual spatial anomaly of the week, so they take a shuttle to inspect the anomaly. They go in, and suddenly they're inside the atmosphere, which, if you think about it, is really freaking lucky, because that thing could have materialized them in the core.
True.
That would have sucked.
Yeah, a little bit. They could have materialized in the core, and that's the end of that. But they were lucky enough to hit atmosphere and at enough height where they could semi recover it. So so we get the problem, the actual like inflection point where everything starts going downhill.
The little girl.
Yeah, we get the little girl who had the cut, and she heals it and tells her name for some reason.
I mean, that was like not that bad.
But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, as a either in proper Star Trek or this show, that's got to be one of the interesting things you have to sort of build up a wall for yourself, is to go, okay, I'm on a planet with undeveloped peoples. I cannot interfere. I don't care what I see. I can't show myself. I can't touch anything. I don't touch anything more than I have to, as non-interference as possible. I am to be a whisper. Just nothing. If I am seen, I am out of there as quickly as I can. I am not going to stand around and be, if I'm going to hide myself as best I can, I'm not going to do what she did, which it seems like, I mean, it came from a good place, but it's also, this is the reason why you do that. I mean, they did make the point at the end that, okay, all societies go through this. If it wasn't her, it would be somebody else, but...
But at the same time, it's like, that was I understand she was still hungover. She was just like not thinking it was like kind of an instinct. Yeah, I have I can fix it. I will. But, it's just the dumbest mistake.
Damn, too bad she didn't have a memory wipe gun.
Right?
We know those exist. We know at least memory wipes as a whole exist. But yeah, if and the thing is, it's it's interesting that I know religions start out of the stupidest of things, but it's interesting that they even considered that that was enough to spawn a religion. The story of a little girl who saw a person in a weird clothing who supposedly healed her forehead. That was enough.
Christians do that too. I mean, it's called faith healing.
Yeah, but one kid, that happening to one kid seems like that's, that was a very,
I mean, damn, I want a religion after me.
No, you don't, because then you're gonna have all the nastiness that comes out of it too.
I know.
Well, you see, I actually wouldn't mind that, because I find it fascinating. But, you know, I'm just evil like that.
Anyway, so they get back and they find out that the planet is going through it has a multiphasic orbit, and it travels through different universes. It cycles between the two universes, and so the time constant for them is like 700 years for every 11 days. So every 700 years for them, they see this thing that's only gone forward 11 days.
It does kind of emphasize the whole God complex thing, because it's like 700 years later, you look exactly the same.
Yeah, it does sort of do that, but
very, very impressive likeness of her for somebody who literally, I think it was 5 people saw her.
True.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was the woman, and well, she must have gone. It was, yeah. Okay.
No,
the guards, and then the sort of vice pope.
Yeah.
Saw him in their pope. So that's at least the woman at the clothes, and the 2 guards, the vice pope and the pope, for lack of a better term for them. You know, and didn't they already have at that point stained glass of her?
So, yeah, but no, had a statue of her with a really great likeness.
Yeah,
for somebody, only like 5 people had seen her at that point. You know, 5 people have actually seen her image. And those, you know, those were the little girl and then the small group that came to find her. And she's like, oh, away.
Okay, so, I forgot about the small group. But
yeah, there was that small group that came and she's like, oh, crap, I'm busted.
Yeah. Because somebody at that time, I doubt they had the knowledge on even how to make the statue at the time. So they had to pass down what she looked like.
Oh, somebody drew her. I'm sure if there could have been an artist in there, somebody who you know.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure their artwork probably consisted of cave drawings.
No, they weren't cave. I mean, they didn't seem cave. They seemed about maybe, especially considering it's like 700 years before, so it was about BC. Or, so not cave drawings, maybe ancient Egypt type thing, or ancient Greece.
It seemed to me, okay, so they said it would okay, so they visit them at 3 points. They visit them at when they're a spacefaring thing. They visit them at a sort of 12, was it Middle Ages sort of thing?
Type thing. I had a feel of like Spanish Inquisition, so that was probably the 1100s.
So it's the first time they visit, it's AD. It
was probably about like 300 AD ish, 400 AD.
So at that point, yeah, I think they would have had.
They would have had artists and bards.
Yeah, they would have had enough to.
But I'm just impressed that they had one of them in that tiny little group.
Yeah, or they could have described them. They could have described them to an artist. They could have found an artist, and it's like, there's a miracle that happened, and they convince him that, there's a god came down and healed her, and they convinced enough people that happened, that an artist is like, well, if this is going to be a big thing, I want to be the first artist to really capture the likeness of Kelly, and they, they described it to him, and he painted it, and that's where their source of Kelly is. And everybody else just copied that look.
But it was still a really good likeness for that kind
absolutely.
Of thing. Like, that was a smack on picture,
I know how the town Kelly witnessed the last visit had grown into a city akin to 14th century, they were calling it. So, about 700. So, even more likely to be fine. With the, but, so we get through. So yeah, at this point they find out the planet is cycling. So they come back down in 11 days, and they see sort of the 14th century. If it was 14th century, then it would be 1300s. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, they start to see the sort of Spanish Inquisition sort of stuff, but well,
place your faith in Kelly, or she will smite.
Nobody expects the Kelly Inquisition. Our chief weapons are surprise. Oh. Except instead of red, they wear blue.
Well, that's because Kelly wears blue.
Yeah, that was the idea. I think the guy that was doing the cutting was wearing brown, but everybody looked like they were wearing brown at the time. Very fashionable color. Doesn't show dirt very well.
Brown goes with everything. You're smart today.
So the admiral's annoyed with what happened before. They didn't think it would make a significant impact, but they still get severely chewed out. And then orders them to not alter the cultural trajectory of the natives in any other way. Do not go down and try and mess with it again. And they do it anyway.
Yes, I mean, explicitly not to, so.
Yeah. So, I mean, and it turns out it wouldn't make any difference anyway, because, a lot of people who want power, those who desire power, they don't want that power taken away. It's sort of a Darth Plagueis thing. The only thing they fear is losing their power. And at this point, this religion has grown to a point where it is a power. It is a governmental power. And if they tell the truth, then they lose their power. The Pope guy is willing to do that, is willing to give up his power in service of the truth. But the Vice Pope is not. And
it's like, screw this, I want to keep my power.
Yeah, so he kills the Pope to prevent him from saying anything. Which, I mean, from a pure, power politics sort of thing, in a way, that would be horrifically problematic from a stability of politics point of view to give up power at that point, because now you've delegitimized the current power structure, and so by doing that so suddenly, it's going to throw the world into a bit of chaos, because now the church is no longer always right. So if the church is not always right and isn't in power, who is? And they're going, and then they have to come up with their own, power structures to sort of fill that void. And so the gradual decline of their sort of church and the gradual, sort of democracy and that sort of thing, if it happens over time, it doesn't really, the shakeup isn't quite as chaotic. But this would have completely turned their world upside down. It would have been really hard for anybody to get. It would have been a free-for-all for who is going to rule this place. But again, it wouldn't have been the truth if he didn't tell the truth. So. See. Okay, and so they come. Oh no, wait. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So they come to the. Yeah. So days later, the planet reemerges. So at this point, they've seen it 3 times. Yeah. Because there's 4 times because they see it the first time, the time they meet the Pope, this time, and then they see him in the far future. I didn't catch that.
They see him. They leave Isaac there that time.
Yeah, they leave Isaac there to really sort of make sure that the message of Kelly gets, being wrong goes out.
I kind of wanted to see like hundreds of statues of him as their new god.
Although, if you paid attention, they did kind of evolve into his theologies. They did replace Kelly with him in a way, because they were all like, someday even you will embrace the true logic. And they were.
Did they?
Huh?
I don't remember them saying something like that. They weren't really embracing. I don't think it was him, because he said that. Didn't he say that?
The black lady mentioned about logic.
Yeah, Isaac says himself that that he didn't do anything. That he didn't lead the way to secularism. He didn't do anything. They evolved this on their own. This was something that happened that was of their own. I mean, the logic thing, that's that's going Vulcan with it, but that's their own sort of way of doing things. And they look like they were slightly ahead of where the Union technology was at the time. From the way they were looking, since they beamed directly in instead of docking. Which, have we seen transporters in the Orville?
I don't think it's as prevalent as in there, but I do think they did one at least once. But I think it might have been maybe a different culture.
Yeah.
Using it. A different civilization was beaming them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I do remember some sort of teleport, but I think it was somebody else teleporting them.
It was that advanced alien race that they beat with reality TV.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the whole march had been, if it hadn't, and they basically said if it hadn't been for Kelly, it would have been somebody else that did this. So it was just a matter of, you just happened to be the figurehead that was at the top of this religious pyramid.
Yeah.
Eventually, they just, they grew into secularism.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is a valid point. Religion evolves, and that's, religion is part of every culture, because every culture wants some reason behind.
Every culture uses religion to explain things that they can't explain, to fill in the gaps where they don't understand.
Exactly. They use higher powers as a means of
explaining why things happen. What's thunder from? Oh, what are thunderbolts from? Well, that's Zeus. He's mad at somebody. What is, why does the sea rage? Well, somebody made Poseidon mad. You always seem lucky on the sea. Well, it's not the skill of my sailors, it's that I always do a tribute to Poseidon or something like that.
Wow, the gods can get pissy.
Oh yes, they can definitely do that. They can be a little, yeah. Hubris is one of their especially against hubris, because if the whole story of Arachne is human hubris ticking off the gods, because that whole story is Arachne's like, I am better than even Athena at weaving, and Athena's like, comes down, weaves something, he's like, challenges her to a contest, weaves something so infinitely better than her. I mean, Arachne was a good weaver, but Athena was just, again, a god at this point. And so she then, since she lost, she turned her Arachne into a spider. And that's where spiders are supposed to come from. It's like, where did spiders come from? Well, it was hubris, and they can teach a lesson about hubris to them.
Same way, Medusa, she was originally supposed to be so beautiful that she, but her vanity pissed off Athena. I mean, not Athena, Aphrodite. And Aphrodite's like, no, I'm the most beautiful. Screw you. Now anybody who looks at you turns to stone.
I mean, yeah. Damn, Aphrodite, vanity much?
Right?
But yeah, I mean, that was the whole point of gods, was to explain things that they didn't have the tools to explain yet. They didn't have science, they didn't have microscopes, they couldn't explain tides and gravity and why,
why people got sick, and and it's also their way of escaping blame, sort of. It's like, and appeasing themselves. Like, oh, so and so died. It's okay. They've gone to heaven. You'll see them again.
But,
well, unfortunately, it seems that our civilization is going in reverse.
I don't think so. I think there are some religions that have gotten to the kind of, they're now right at their peak of their sort of arrogance, but
I'm not just talking about religion. I'm just talking about every year it seems people just get stupider and stupider.
No, there's just more people. So when there's more people, there are more cameras to capture the stupid. So your odds of capturing stupid is is increasing by the year. Especially, it's like now, because 10 years ago, would you have been able to, would you have, if somebody down the street did something stupid and somebody just happened to be filming at the time or had their phone out, starts capturing it on film, you might not have ever seen that. But somebody down the street does that now, there might be 2 or 3 people with their phones out recording it, and they're going to upload it on YouTube tomorrow. So I think it's less that there are more stupid people, in that there are more cameras catching stupid people, and there's also a larger population, so you're more likely to run into stupid people. So,
well,
I still think that idiocracy is real.
Well, it's apparently offensive for Santa Claus to say ho 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 now.
Yeah, it's offensive to prostitutes.
But anyway, let's kind of steer this thing back from the sort of high plane of thinking down to down to actually talking about the episode proper. So Ed has a drink in the mess hall afterwards and is met by Kelly again. And at this point, we find out that, there's like the mistakes. This situation just made it that much clearer that they can't be together. That they can't. They can't be objective. They can't be proper to their duty if they're together. They have to remain as friends and colleagues, and they can't be anything more. It gets in the way.
Yeah.
I understand that is why a lot of places discourage working with, relatives and family, because, you can't be objective when it's like right there,
Yeah, and dating within the workplace, at least within the same section. Like, so somebody works in accounting, and you don't want to be dating within accounting because you're going to run into that person every day until one of you quits or is fired. And
that's why I'm a great coworker. I hate everybody.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and one thing that out of this that's interesting is, so they're advancing and they have access every about 700 years to the Union universe. Okay. All it takes is one differing political philosophy every 700 years on their planet, and they would know when the phasing was going to happen, set up ships, and invade the Union universe, and then just expand out and take over the entirety of the Union space because, hey, our technology is advanced, and every 11 days we get a new shipment of advanced technology. If they send in new ships, and we send them back our old ones so that they can go, hey, every 11 days we get 700 years advanced in technology, so we can just take over because our technology is so much further advanced that we can do whatever we want.
It'd be kind of funny. It's like one time they're like, they're beings of pure light. It's like, we have transcended past our physical forms.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was an episode of TNG. There was a guy who transcended the physical form and became like a ball of energy or something.
Are you talking about the Traveler?
What?
Are you talking about the Traveler?
I don't remember what it was. I just remember a guy turning into a ball of energy. And
yeah, that was what's his name's teacher.
I don't think it was that one. It was something else. Let me see if I can look it up. Okay, I can just look it up from here. I forget that I've got this covered up right now. Yeah, I think it was something to do with he was not liked. His sort of race of this certain species wasn't. There was something oppressing them, and it turns out they turn into.
It has been so long since I've watched TNG.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I don't see. Was it the Arcanians? Anyway, yeah, I forget what it was, but yeah, there was a. Anyway, anyway, I forget, but there was something like that. Anyway, but yeah, overall, a very interesting episode that brings up a lot of interesting things to talk about. It follows what Roddenberry was kind of going for with Star Trek. Star Trek, there has to be. I mean, it doesn't always work, but the thing with Star Trek was it was always supposed to have a reason. Why are they doing this? What's the larger message of this episode? There has to be a deeper, deeper message.
The allegory behind it.
Yeah, an allegory. This has to be an allegory for something. There has to be. Yeah, you can have this really cool space adventure, but if it doesn't have anything behind it, what's the point?
That's what I really like about this series as a whole. They do the allegory so freaking well. Like, he knows how to write talk, basically.
Well,
the way talk was intended to be.
Yeah. Well, the thing that really helps that, I think, is
He's such a fanboy.
well, he's a giant fanboy, and he got Brandon Braga on board, so that's.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's
gonna help too, because I think, yeah, I mean, essentially, as far as I'm concerned, this is the current Star Trek. Discovery doesn't exist, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to Star Trek. In my list of canon series, Discovery doesn't show up. It's, it's just. There's so much wrong with what they did to the Star Trek thing. They tried to make it, from what I understand, they tried to make it too JJ verse. And JJ verse is basically, they took Star Trek, flayed it, took its skin and wrapped it over an action flick, and that's it. No lesson, no allegory, no deeper meaning. Just here's us fighting for an hour and a half. There you go.
There isn't even a real story behind the Abramverse. I mean, don't get me wrong. I really do like the Abramverse as far as a movie is concerned.
They're excellent popcorn movies. They're popcorn movies. They're not Star Trek. They're not
exactly.
They're not a this far and no further sort of thing. It's not a. There's no there's no Moby Dick. There's no freaking Moby Dick reference. There's
no racist robot.
Hey, don't knock the racist robot. Everybody loves the racist robot.
But yeah, you don't have this sort of
thing.
This sort of Wrath of Khan, how Khan's own just need for revenge ended up, destroying him. His own desire for revenge destroyed him. And, and so, it's that was a story. That one had a deeper meaning behind it. The whole, if you seek to go for revenge, dig 2 graves. But yeah, the series, it does feel like the true successor to the the 86 87 to 2005 sort of Star Trek bonanza. It's, you know, because it's one of the things that I am really I really got kind of spoiled on. That is that until 2005 I had never lived in a time where there wasn't a Star Trek. There wasn't something Star Trek. If it was just Enterprise, or it was just, you know, this or just that, there was always a Star Trek of some form or fashion on. And so you could always,
after 2005 there were Star Treks, but they were movies.
Yeah, I'm talking about, I'm limiting it to TV, but
I mean, wasn't Nemesis after, like,
I can look it up.
what year did Nemesis come out? Because I thought that movie came out way later.
2002.
Oh.
Yeah, way earlier. But yeah,
Well,
anything.
after,
Generally, what I say is anything sort of Kelvin timeline forward doesn't exist to me at the moment, because Discovery can't do Klingons. I've seen clips. Kelvin couldn't do it. Discovery couldn't do it. It's like, I'm looking at the Kelvin timeline weren't good. I didn't like what they did with the Klingons for the JJ verse, but I could handle it. It was bad, but it wasn't, oh my goodness, that's horrible sort of thing. And then you go to Discovery and you see clips. I've not seen the actual show itself. I've only seen what other people have said about it and little clips. It looks painful to wear that costume. It looks.
Oh yeah. It looks painful to talk in that shit. Like, I feel sorry for the actors so badly, because you can hear it in their voice. Oh, are all smoking like this the entire time because they have so many prosthetics in their mouth.
Yeah, it's, you know, you didn't have to reinvent the wheel with Discovery. You tried to reinvent the wheel, and you messed up. Okay.
And they did so. Like, I think that the characters, I have the same problem with Discovery as I have with Enterprise, honestly. They had a great premise with the characters. Like, the characters are all well acted and they're well, you know, conceived, but the story is so weak that it's just, there is no way they can carry it.
Yeah.
But,
you know, it's like the story itself is just wrong on every level.
But yeah, and
the way they can that those poor actors can carry it all for themselves.
I mean, and see, the thing is, you had, at that time, at the timeline that Discovery is supposed to occur at, you had two ways to depict Klingons which would have been acceptable. You could have done them like Worf, and that would have been fine, because that's a canon thing. Only, according to Enterprise, only some of the Klingons looked like, you know, dressed in gold. looked like the ones we see in the original series. Only some of them did. Some looked more like, you know, it only affected the colony, you know, sort of problem only afflicted some. So you will see some of the augment accident people, yes, but you can also see some that looked more like Worf. And if they had gone with either the original series look, which was canon, which would be fine at this point in time, or they had gone with ones that look like more like, Worf, Gowron, Martok, the Duras sisters, those sorts of, if they had gone with either of those options, good, fine. Those are both valid canon ways to depict Klingons. They make sense on both accounts. But yeah, this was. I know they're like, oh, we got to make it look super cool. We got to we got all this new prosthetic technology. We have to use it. It's like, no, you don't. I mean, the Daleks haven't changed. Not much.
No, really, the only change in 50 years has been they went to color. And they did have the War Daleks in the World War II episode with Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
That's literally the only time the Daleks have changed in 50 years.
Yeah, a slightly new paint job.
That's basically it.
That's it. A paint job. And they're inside, they're little goo creatures inside of a tin can, so they can be repainted at will. That's not a big problem. That doesn't change the look of the species themselves. They're just in a slightly, their suits are slightly different color. You don't need to mess with it that much. And the Cybermen, they changed them, but not that much.
And actually, they had reason to change them. They gave a reason, a backstory to why they changed.
Yeah.
Those Cybermen are not the original Cybermen.
Yeah.
Those Cybermen are from Cyber Industries. They are an alternate universe Cyberman. And actually, in one of the more recent episodes, I forget what one it is, they did have classic Cybermen.
Yeah, the Mondasian Cybermen.
Yeah, they had the Mondasian Cybermen in one of the newer episodes. And you could see the difference.
Yeah. And even at that, it's not a super gigantic difference. I mean, there's some differences, yes, absolutely, but the differences aren't extreme. Compared to what they did to the Klingons, they're really not that different. Comparatively.
Yeah.
Morg in between TNG and Voyager, basically the same thing.
Yeah, they didn't change them at all. There was no need to. They had probably better prosthetics technology, but they didn't have to. They didn't, so they didn't. They had the I forget the first one we see where we have Worf-looking Klingons. I forget which. It's one of the original series movies. I forget which one it is. I think was it 7? I can't remember. Where we see Worf-looking Klingons, and it was like that from then until 2005, and that was fine. There was no need to change it.
2005 one, because they're like, oh shit, that's right. They didn't originally look like this. Quick, think of something. Oh, okay, it was a virus. A virus changed him to the original, to the, TNG one, and then we have a new virus changing him back. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's really it's a sort of interesting attempt at sort of reconciling things. But at least at that point, you've at least explained why the original series ones looked the way they did. It's like, yes, they were afflicted by the augment thing. that makes sense. I mean, yes, this review of Mad Idolatry has gone slightly Star Trek-y, but it's it's so bad to watch this. Just them just destroy the franchise with this awful mess. It's like, dude, if the next one they come out with, like, they get through Discovery and they realize, oh, well, we really messed up, and this isn't quite as profitable as we thought it was, and then they take it down and they're like, okay, now what?
I think the biggest problem they've had is the paywall.
Yeah, nobody.
I mean, besides the movies, which, I mean, you can still stream them on Netflix.
Yeah. Or
Star
you can.
Trek free.
Yeah, Star Trek's always been on TV. Free.
Yeah,
and that's where Orville really eats Discovery's lunch, is that Fox had the guts to put their Star Trek on TV. And I
mean, honestly, behind a paywall with Orville is a lot less, that's something decent to put behind a paywall.
Yeah, I wouldn't want them to, but
of course not.
But they have not put it behind a paywall. They've done everything they can to try to grow the brand, to make it good, to stick to sort of the spiritual successor of Star Trek. But yeah, Discovery, huge misstep. They could have had a lot. There were so many bad decisions in Discovery, so many bad decisions. Just the Klingons, putting it behind a paywall, I mean, I understand upgrading the ship, the looks of the ship to make it, sort of somewhat more modern standards, but
no, that's another problem, because that's supposed to take place for Star Trek.
Yeah, it's supposed to take place in the prime time. Like, I'm saying a little bit, not like, to try and stick to to what TOS did. Maybe you like the screens that were inactive, that were just always showing the same thing, make those show things. Maybe you clean it up a little bit here and there. You update it a little bit. But you keep the sort of same thing. Keep physical switches there. Keep the scope. Because Enterprise, for whatever you can deride it, and it has its problems. That looks like a ship. That looks like it's in the right time frame. That ship looks like it's in the right time frame.
Yeah.
Because it's got the manual switches. It's stainless steel. It's it looks like it belongs at the timeline.
The uniforms are more, old-fashioned, and it looks more like a predecessor to the Enterprise, to the original Star Trek.
Yeah, it's for what problems Enterprise had, the design choices weren't really usually one of them. The design of the ship, the design of the interior, the design of the Mako looked just like normal, sort of military units. The jumpsuits look like kind of an evolution of NASA flight suits. I mean, everything looks like it's an evolution of where we're at, but sort of a half step towards what you got in the original series. And that was what it needed to do.
Exactly.
You can do that. They did it in Enterprise. They can have a modern setting that looks like it's before the original series. You can do that. They did it. Why you couldn't do that now?
Enterprise, but this layout of it is not one of them.
Yeah.
The writing and the stylization were brilliant. It was the writing, and in this case, it's way more than just that.
Yeah, there's lots of problems. Discovery tried to do too much.
They tried to add too many bells and whistles.
Yeah, they trying to be JJ verse too much and not TV, because if this had been put into the if we'd been told this is Kelvin timeline, okay. If they had made Discovery Kelvin timeline, maybe this isn't quite as bad with the stylization, because the Kelvin timeline looks more like what they have there from what I've seen. Okay, if they just said, okay, no, this is a series set in the Kelvin timeline. Okay, I can get over a lot of the look. I still think the Klingons look hideous, but the
hideous Kelvin too. I mean, in Kelvin verse 2.
Yeah, they look hideous in the Kelvin verse too, but I can let you go on the ship because it's Kelvin verse, and that's what the Kelvin timeline looks like. That's the style that Starfleet has in the Kelvin timeline. So I can get over that.
Yeah.
But yeah, if they had done that, I would have fewer problems, not no problems, but I would have fewer problems with Discovery. I would still have a lot of problems with the paywall and with the treatment of the Klingons and all that stuff, but I would have fewer problems with the interior, with the uniforms, with all that.
Yeah.
Well, the uniforms aren't terrible. I mean,
the uniforms are decent. And wait a second, not even that, because even if it is the Kelvinverse, Kelvinverse changed at Kirk's birth, right?
At what?
That's with the Kelvinverse timeline branched off at Kirk's birth.
Yeah. Kirk's birth basically the day of Kirk's birth. That's where the timeline splits. Everything had kind of gone the same until that moment, and then
so do have a number of problems with the storyline, because I do not remember Spock having a sister, an adopted sister.
Yeah. There's even that. I forgot about that. I'd only briefly heard about that, but that seems really shoehorned to make it TOS relevant. Like, this is really, really shoehorned in to make this relevant to the original series. It's like, But yeah, the uniforms themselves are probably fine, but if it's in the Kelvin timeline, the uniforms are probably okay because everything's shiny and chrome and whatnot. But yeah, it's just there are so many problems with Discovery, and I am so glad we have the Orville. I can get my Star Trek fix without having to get behind a paywall or deal with terrible writing or horrible choices with clowns. You didn't have to do anything new. Just if you want a half Klingon, use Blana Torres as your guide. Is your guide. If you want a full Klingon, you have the Duras sisters, you have Worf, you have Gowron, even freaking crazy-eyed Gowron. I would take an army of crazy-eyed Gowrons over this mess. Martok, somebody like that, or even the old TOS Klingons would have been great. That would have been great. You could have used the old uniforms. You could have done all sorts of cool stuff with that. But you're like, no, I've got to completely mess this up because everybody's expecting us to use 50 layers of prostheses to make these guys look weird. And no,
so speaking of the Orville,
You know
Are we
what?
done with the review?
What?
I think. You know what? I cannot wait until Voltaire gets a hold of this. Voltaire gets a hold of this.
Yeah. Oh, they're just gonna rip him a new one. But yeah, I think Madrock was trying to get us to wrap up what we were talking about because we went off on a bit of a tangent.